G'day everyone, Muddy here. Basically what we're looking at today is my 2016 KTM 300 XE. Basically what's going on with this thing is if we have a look at the speedo, it's up to pretty much 100 hours. So it's time to pull it apart, do the piston and ring. We'll give the bore a bit of a hone out, clean it up and give it a new lease on life. I've also noticed it's been lacking a little bit of snap and it's also lacking a little bit of bottom end. So I think it's, I wouldn't be surprised it's got a score in the bore, like a slight score or something like that. But anyway, we'll pull it apart, we'll hone it out and we'll put a brand new piston and ring kit through it. And it should be good to go. So this is a pretty easy job. To prove that, my head mechanic here is going to be helping me today. So it's pretty simple. I'll go through and break it down a little bit for you. Won't be going into a heap of detail because there's not really. So anyway, let's have a look at it. Okay, so one of the first things we need to do is remove the seat and the fuel tank. So firstly, I'll just disconnect the fuel line there off the fuel tap. Underneath the back, you'll see there's a little hole there. In there is an 8mm screw. I'll take the seat off. Then we take out the 2 bolts in the radiator, which is one on each side there. They're either 8mm or a 27 Torx bit. And then where the seat connects just here, there's another 8mm bolt. Basically pull the fuel tank off, pull the seat off, and we'll go from there. So to remove the pipe, you need to undo this bolt here. Then there's another one down here. And then there's 2 springs just up in here on the power pipe. Disconnect those and basically this exhaust pipe comes straight off. Power pipe's off. Next step will be we'll just take the spark plug cap off. We'll undo the cooling hoses here for the cooling system. So one there and one there, we'll get them out of the way. What we'll also need to do is drain the coolant, which is this bolt just here. So we'll drain the coolant, get rid of that, take these hoses off. We'll take this bolt out up here that holds the cylinder head in place. We'll also have to undo these 3 screws here and take this off to get to the setup for the power valve. So we'll go ahead and do that and then go from there. So as you can see now, I've taken the top radiator hose off and taken that side casing off, taken that top bracket off. In here, as you can see, this is where the power valve setup sort of hooks up, and there's a little clip around the top of that. So we've got to sort of jimmy him off so we can pop that off, and then basically what we'll do is we undo these 4 bolts, 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. I'm not going to undo them fully, we're just going to crack them and bring them up a bit. And then, because it's really important I show you how to actually get the cylinder off, because there's a good way and then there's a way that costs you lots of money. And I'd rather put money into riding rather than fixing my bike. Rightio, so what you can see I've done, loosened off the nuts on the cylinder head, one in behind there. And on the other side, you've got to drop the starter motor. Starter motor's pretty easy, it's just 2 bolts here, and then you tap him back, undo the bolt behind there and there, so you got to take that cover off once again. Now comes the interesting tricky bit. What you tend to see a lot of people do, and this is rule number one. Never ever get your screwdriver and stick it in there and try and pry to loosen the top cylinder off. You risk the damage of, you risk damaging the base and all that. So never ever use a screwdriver in there to pop it open. You could get a hammer, like a rubber mallet. I'd never use a steel hammer or anything. Rubber mallet, you could give it a little, just gentle taps to pop this up. You'll notice I've left the spark plug in. The reason I've left the spark plug in is with my Kickstarter. If I just slowly press this over, it'll feel compression, and we're seeing that just popped up nicely now. So that is the easiest and the gentlest way. See that? There you go. Very gently, very easily, I just use that Kickstarter to kick it over, and as you saw, that popped it open nicely without using screwdrivers, rubber mallets or anything like that. And that's why I leave the spark plug in. So now, what I'll do is I'll undo the rest of those bolts and take that cylinder off, and then we'll have a look inside. This is where you need to get a pair of your jocks ready. So maybe your jocks that you've blown the arse out of because you farted too much. You need to have a rag or a pair of old stinky jocks ready to go. So as you can see, there's where your stinky jocks come in handy. You stick them in there. Now, later on we've got to take a clip out of here. You drop that clip, it's going to land on the rag, not down in your bottom end. Stops any dirt and stuff getting in there as well. So, pair of stinky jocks, stick them in there, stuff up the hole, nothing can fall in. Now, just as I suspected, once I took this off, quick look inside, take it outside so you can see there is, I'll try to get the angle right, there is a bit of scoring in that bore. So I'm not sure how well that picks that up, but there's a little bit of a score on that side of the bore and on the other side as well. So definitely needs a bit of honing in there to get rid of that score up there and that score up in there. So piston's got a little bit of a mark on it as well, so it's pretty much as I expected. Was lagging a little bit of power and that. You can see the, not sure how well you can see that score on the bore, on the cylinder, on the piston just in there. And there's also scoring on the front of the piston there. It's not overly bad, but definitely added up to a little bit of lack of performance. So you could potentially just replace the piston if there was no scoring in the bore or in the piston. Check that there's no excessive heat marks or anything like that, otherwise I would hone it. So if you're just replacing the piston, rings, gudgeon pin, top end bearing, and your bore's all good, you probably wouldn't need to hone it. I'd just hone it anyway. So some people will go, well, if I'm not going to hone it, I don't need to take the cylinder head off because, you know, if this is not leaking, why mess with it? Why replace it? Fair call. I'm going to have to take it off because I've got to hone it and run the dunny brush through it. So all I'll do is undo these bolts at the top, take this off, and then I'll take the piston off. The top of the piston, I'll have to clean it up so I can see it. Now, there'll be a number on top. Couple of things, there's a little arrow there, you probably can't see it, I'll show you it later. The arrow's got to point forwards to make sure the piston goes in the right way, and I'll show you that later when I get a new one. But there'll be a number 1 or a number 2 on the top of this piston, so that tells us basically the size piston that we need to put in here. Anyway, I'll rip the cylinder head off. In there, just with a little screwdriver, I'll use this little bugger to get this little clip out. As you can see, there he is there. Off he goes. So throw them in the bin, replace them. Basically all I'll do is take the one off the other side as well, and then I'll use a socket. It's about the same size as that pin in there, the gudgeon pin, and I'll just very gently tap him through until it's through enough that I can just pop the piston off. And then, as I say, I'll clean up the top so I know what number it is, and then it's into the bike shop I used to work at. We'll chuck the dunny brush through it, we'll get a new piston and all that sort of stuff, and all the kits and bits and pieces I need, and then we'll come back and put it all back together, but that's pretty much it. So let me show you getting the gudgeon pin out first. So as you can see on the top of that piston, it'll be hard to sort of see, but you'll see a number 1 there, just above the numbers there. You'll see a number 1. So it tells me it's a number 1 piston, which is the first original piston, basically. On that side, it's hard to get at the light, but you'll see a little arrow, and that's the arrow that must point forward. So when it goes back in, it must be pointing that way. So that tells me what size piston I need. Is a number 1, not a number 2. Now we're at the cylinder head off. So been to the bike shop, got the bore all honed up and dunny brushed, so looking much better inside there. So the boys did a good job with that. So basically, for those of you who don't know, what they do is, I took it to the bike shop I used to work at, and basically they just run, looks like a dunny brush, that's what we call it. It's just a honing tool on the end of a cordless drill. Give it a bit of a lube. You got to lube your tool before you put it in there, and run it through and get that cross hatching happening, as you can probably see there. You get that cross hatching, get rid of all the marks and all that sort of thing, clean it right up. That's good for another 100 hours now. So that's back. Throw that in the bin. Top end kit includes new gudgeon pin and clips, new piston. So here it is here. So that's what the new piston looks like. Same size, number 1. Looks a bit better than the old one. And in here you've got your top end bearing. You've got your exhaust seals, your head seals, new copper washers for your head gasket as well, for your head bolts. I also bought a new spark plug. You know, just you're doing it, put a new spark plug through. New air filter as well going in, and then we've got our base gaskets there, and the side covers for the power valve setup. So got pretty much everything. Some new coolant. I'm going to do a gearbox flush while I'm there as well, so clean that out and put some new fluids in there. So it'll be right to go. Basically, the other thing you'll want to do, when you buy these kits, you'll get different thickness gaskets. So a set of verniers, measure how thick it is and put the same one in there. Start changing it can change the timing of the engine and all that sort of thing, so you're best to just run with whatever the thickness is there. So we'll measure that up. This will need a good clean, so basically what I'll do is I'll put it in some two-stroke oil, sorry, not two-stroke oil, some two-stroke mix. Put it in some two-stroke mix, just in a tub, give it a real good clean out. I'll probably do that a couple of times, changing the petrol in between, make sure there's no contaminants. Then what I'll do is I'll just get a bit of dunny paper, spray some brake cleaner on it, and rub it around on the inside, get it all nice and clean, make sure that it is spotless. There is no chance of any iron filings from when it was honed that can stay behind and get caught up and destroy the new piston and that. So I'll do that now, get this all prepped and cleaned up, clean this base up, clean the cylinder all up, get that all done. Then we'll start putting the piston back in, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to put the a clip in and the gudgeon pin in. So first thing we'll do is open up the packet. So in here we have the gudgeon pin and 2 clips. So what we've got to do, we're going to insert the clip into here. What we're going to do is put the gudgeon pin in just a little bit. So the trick with this is use some of your two-stroke oil, whatever you're going to use, and lube him up. Give him a good coat in oil. Make sure he's nicely lubed. Basically, we insert him from the side without the clip. Don't force him, but he will just go in there. Have the pin sticking out far enough, you can still get everything into there. So that's it prepped, ready to go on. There's a little arrow on the top of the piston. That little arrow there always points to the exhaust port. So on the KTMs, that's towards the front wheel, on the 300s, the 16 300s. But if it's on a different bike, it could be pointing somewhere else. It's got to point to the exhaust port. So no matter what bike it is, always to the exhaust port. Line up your rings. There's two little pins in your rings, in your cylinder, on your piston, and those rings need to sit and join where those pins are. So I'll go ahead and coat this in oil as well. So same process, plenty of oil all over the piston. Nicely lubed. Around the rings, skirt, everything. You always lube your tool before you put them in. Anytime you put something in a hole, no matter what it is, always lube him up. It makes it easy for everybody, doesn't it? So a nice amount of oil all over that. Okay, that's prepped. Same thing, always lube your hole. She'll thank you for it. Bit of oil around through there. And through there. And the bottom end. Gotta be careful not to get it on where the base gasket's gonna seal on, but everywhere else gets nicely lubed. Not a dry spot in there. Just two-stroke oil, all lubed through there. Next step, you want to give your the top end bearing as well, give that a good lube as well. So I'll do the same thing with that. Then we'll put the base gasket on, put the cylinder back on, put the piston in, cylinder back on. Alright, base gasket on. What I'm going to do, put a bit of lube in there, put the top end bearing in there and the top of the con rod, then slide the piston over, make sure that the arrow is pointing towards the exhaust port, which is forwards on this bike. Once I slide the pin in, put that other gudgeon pin in, and then it's time to slide the cylinder on. Alright, let's do that one. Okay, as you can see, cylinder's back on now, sitting in there. I've just done them up to finger tension, so now's the time to actually do them up properly. If we have a look over here, our cylinder nut on the base is an M8 and it's at 30 Newton meters or 22.1 foot-pound. So we'll go ahead and torque those up, and then we'll start getting ready to put the side covers back on for the power valves, for the power valve setup. We'll make sure this is nice and clean before I put the cylinder head on. I'll give it a couple of little compression strokes just to turn it over a little bit before I go putting the head on or anything, just to make sure the piston moves nicely up and down inside. Alright, so as you can see, I've got the power valve cases back on, got the starter motor back in place, and the guard cylinder heads on, torqued up to the right specs. Hose clamp back on for your radiator hose. Over this side, power valve setup all back on again. Time to put the spark plug in. Put my top bracket back on for my cylinder head. Then pretty much put the exhaust pipe back on, put my bung back in for my for the coolant, put some fuel through it, put the tank on, fuel through it, start up, away we go. So now all I've got to do is put the fuel tank back on, connect up the fuel line, put the seat back on, top it up with some coolant. Okay, so mixing up coolant, using this stuff, basically wanted at 33%. So the cooling system takes 1.2 litres, so it needs 400 of this. And now I need rest with this stuff, distilled water. I'm going to put in 800 mils of this to make it up to 1.2 in total. Okay, that's our coolant mixed up. Okay, everything's now done, so basically all we need to do now is a bit of choke, hit starter. There we go. Yeah, done pretty much everything. Brand new air filter. The last one was pretty bad, so I didn't even bother cleaning it. I just threw it straight in. So new air filter, new piston rings, all that sort of stuff as you've seen. The other thing I want to mention, always check these springs. These springs that hold your power pipe on there and there, always check those. They do stretch a bit, so mine was stretched, so I put new ones on there. They don't cost much. So yeah, everything's back together, everything's on. Let's see. So the old piston, bit of a theory about this one. Took it into the shop where I used to work, the KTM dealership, and a few of us had a look at it. A couple of theories on why it scored out like that. Can be because it wasn't warmed up properly, so a bit of cold seizure. So make sure when you start up your two-stroke, you don't just go flat out and straight onto it. Warm it up properly before you go hitting band too cold, because that can cause that. The air filter could be another issue if that wasn't fitted properly. That's why they changed them later on. They changed the air filters because some people have trouble sealing them up. So it could be that as well, or it was just a shoddy job last time it was put in. The previous owner reckons it was changed, but yeah, we're looking at the piston and the wear marks and that, we think it's done a bit more than 50 hours. So yeah, don't know about that one, but anyway, all good, job's done. Now, I've got to do front brake pads to this. I've also got to do chain sprockets, front and rear sprockets. Leave in the comments if you want to see me do a bit more stuff, like show you how to do the chain and sprockets. You know, show you how I wash my air filters, how I oil them, how I put them back in, make sure they fit. So yeah, if there's anything like that you want to know, leave it in the comments, and I'll do my best to get around to it and put something up for you. So yeah, all done. Thanks for watching, everyone. Ride well, everyone. See you out in the trails.
Hello, and I am riding on the bike. Vroom.
What sound does it make?
Vroom.
That goes bop, 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 bop. It's a 2-stroke. Thanks for helping me rebuild the engine.
You're welcome.